So yeah, Pantry Cleanout Seed Oils Edition. So we're just going to be talking about like why seed oils is important, what they are, where you might find them in the pantry, and then what you can do about that. So let's dive in. We got a lot to cover today. So small changes in our pantry can make a big impact over time. And as we'll see through some of the research that we got that we're going to go through today as well. So you don't need to overhaul everything overnight. It'll be more sustainable and more long lasting if we do a little bit at a time and learn how to implement that and then build on that. So today the goal is let's bring awareness to what we might have in our pantries in our houses, what we're putting into our mouths, what we're looking at when we go to the grocery store, and the ingredient list and why that can matter here. So let's talk about why it matters. So the small little things on those ingredient lists matter more than we think, right? So most people might look at sugar, how much calories something might have, how much protein something might have, but what they're ignoring is some of these small little ingredients like the oils that can be used that are causing inflammation in our bodies. So if you're looking at some of the ingredient lists and maybe just looking at the calories, not flipping that little thing over and looking at the ingredients, let's start talking about some oils that might be present that could be causing some underlying inflammation that we don't even know is building up over time. And yeah, like I said, the goal of this clean out, we're not chasing perfection. We're just trying to build awareness. What are we putting in that we could be doing better? Maybe when we run out of something, how can we replace it? That might be a better replacement for us. So let's learn what to look for. Let's make some gradual changes over time. Let's reduce any unnecessary inflammatory load. And then we can build a stronger kitchen foundation on that, right? And if you want to throw things out, great. If you feel like this is a time where you're like, yeah, I'm ready to change, I'm ready to get rid of this junk, toss it and start over. Get to it. So seed oils, what are seed oils? These are oils that are extracted from seeds of various plants. And while that might not sound overly inflammatory, the way they pull these things out is usually pretty unnatural. It's why they are used widely in packaged foods. So we need to read our ingredient lists. It's not the same pressing or churning as an olive oil or like butter. It's a different process that they extract these out. So they usually will use either high heat or chemical that's going to alter these oils for the more inflammatory, right? So common seed oils that we know, there's a list here: soybean, canola oil, corn oil, cottonseed, sunflower, safflower oil, etc. You guys can read that. Vegetable oil blends. And so if you see these things in the ingredient list and where they can commonly hide here, these are silently contributing to some inflammation. And what happens is these are all very high in omega-6 fatty acids. And so if we get too much omega-6 fatty acid, then that is very inflammatory to the body. So we need a balance between omega-6 and omega-3. So a lot of the foods that we're eating are very high in omega-6, and then that is making our omega-3s low. And so that ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is very inflammatory to the body. So if we take out some of these hidden omega-6s, it can be really helpful to the body. And not to mention that all of these oils are really highly processed as well. So that's going to be a load on the body that we don't really need. So even when foods are marketed as healthy, granola bars or mixed nuts, whole grain crackers, often they can contain one or more of these seed oils. So we really got to look at the packaging, look at the ingredient list to find these answers out. So why are they so common? It's the easiest answer is they're cheap. They're shelf stable. So that is a big problem. The more shelf stable we tend to make things, that's where we went wrong. And our agricultural kind of processing, the more processed it is, the more self-stable it is, but usually the more inflammatory it is to us as well. So that's why they're a little more problematic, because they're cheap. That's why they use them. They're shelf stable, but that also means for us that might not be the best thing. So they're easy to produce, shelf stable, neutral tasting. That's another one that they use these. But highly processed oils became a major part of our diet very quickly in the last few decades. And so we're starting to figure out that these things maybe aren't so good for us. So in the majority of human history, we used more traditional fats, butter, tallow, olive oil. Those things got demonized in the late 80s, early 90s, and into the 2000s. And so we're kind of came up with all these seed oils that we're finding out it's not good. And actually, it wasn't the butter, tallow, olive oil. It was probably some processed stuff that was more of a detriment to us. So, what makes these oils problematic? How they get these things out. So, heat, the processing that causes oxidation and that damages the fat, changes the properties of the fats. So, not all fats are created equal, and not all oils go on the same journey before they reach our kitchen. And so, that's why some manufacturers charge more than others, is kind of how they pull these oils out matters. So many seed oils are subjected to an intensive industrial process that involves multiple stages of high heat extraction, chemical treatment, and refinement. So understanding that helps us process why these are hard on our body, but also they extract it through high heat or chemical processed, and then that usually makes these oils rancid. And so what they do is they use a deodorizer or bleach to neutralize that odor. So that's probably not the greatest for us either, right? So after they get exposed to that, then it's what's in our bottle that's coming to our houses, right? But the way that they do that, there's safer ways and probably less harmful ways to extract some of these oils that's better for us. So once we damage a fat, that creates oxidative stress. So that's, you can think of that as inflammation in the body, which is a key driver to that low grade inflammation. And so low grade inflammation over time is what we see in chronic illness. There's a low grade inflammation that's happening at the base level of the cell. And it's not really that single exposure, it's that constant daily exposure that adds up over time that taxes our body enough to where we need help. So if we're consuming these things on a daily basis, then this is where it's going to be an issue. So what does rancid mean? Oils can go bad, fats can go bad, sometimes even before they reach your kitchen. So rancidity happens when fats oxidize. So when oxygen molecules interact with fatty acid chains in the oil and break them down, that's rancid. That's when rancidity is happening, right? So when this happens, oil forms new compounds, and some of which are associated with oxidative damage to the body. So when the oil changes, that's when it becomes harmful to us. Many refined seed oils are already partially oxidized by the time they're in the bottle because of the high heat, the chemical processed, and that changes the properties of that oil. So even some good oils potentially can be bad. So olive oils or avocado oils, depending on how they extract it out, can be not great. Right. So we have to pay attention to these things, and we'll talk about some ways that we can look at evaluating oils that you're buying in the store. So signs that they're maybe rancid: a bitter, sharp smell, paint like or chemical odor, metallic taste, or if you're used to buying that oil and it tastes off, that could be a sign that it's rancid. So why does the heat matter? Some oils break down than others, and I'll have a chart of this. I think it's on the next slide, but when oil has all oils or fats just are different, tolerant to different heat levels. And so when oils are high in polyunsaturated fatty acids, which is most seed oils, they're kind of unstable, meaning the bond is more likely to break down when exposed to heat. So an example is even olive oil. So olive oil, unrefined extra virgin olive oil, has a low smoke point, and we'll talk about what that means here in the next couple of slides. But the properties of our oil matter. So when a fat has more saturated fats, that is more stable for cooking. And an oil like olive oil, where it's more polyunsaturated fats, that is more for dressing. Like after you cook it, you can put that on for taste, right? And to get some healthy fats in. So polyunsaturated soybean, canola, corn, and sunflower tend to oxidize faster when heat is applied. And then more stable coconut oil, tallow, avocado oil, those handle heat a little bit better. So think about that and the other thing to think about too is when an oil has been sitting in a commercial deep fryer all day and being reheated repeatedly, that oil gets damaged continuously. A lot of them use some higher heat stable oils, but even when you use those oils again and again and again, that's going to break down and become rancid as well. So just think about that as you're eating out, because some of these oils have probably been there for a while, and it comes down to cost because it costs to replace that oil, right? And a lot of the times they're not using a favorable oil. But that's why we look at where we're eating out and what they tend to use, or you should be. So best cooking fats by temperature. So this is kind of using the right fats in the right situation. So if you're trying to do high heat or searing, a refined avocado oil, so I put a couple brands there, is probably the best. And we'll talk about smoke point in the next slide. But this is just kind of generals. There is even avocado oil has a smoke point, and if you're hitting the smoke point, it's too hot for that. But probably refined avocado oil is probably one of the better ones for heating, high heat and searing. Coconut oil, avocado oil, and butter, usually the medium heat, great for sauteing vegetables. And then no heat finishing, extra virgin olive oil. We can drizzle that on. Baking, usually butter, avocado oil, ghee is okay. Coconut oil is okay for that. And then air frying, you want that higher heat, stable, saturated fat. So avocado tallow. And then a note at the bottom, just extra virgin olive oil is excellent for cold uses, very low heat. It has a very low smoke point. So you don't want to use that as a high heat cooking oil. And then ghee removes milk solids from butter, making it more heat stable. So it's a little more ideal for the higher temperatures as well. So smoke point. So if you're cooking and there's a bunch of smoke coming off of your pan, that usually means your oil that you're using is probably breaking down and it's not good. You're changing the properties of that fat. So a cooking oil smoke point is the temperature at which it begins to visibly smoke in the pan. And that moment matters because when the oil starts smoking, it's not just aesthetic problem, it's a sign that the oil is changing properties, right? So slightly, you can think of it as burnt. So the chemical signal that oil has begun to break down is releasing potentially harmful compounds, including aldehydes and free radicals that are associated with inflammation. So just remember that as you're cooking. A general rule of thumb, if your pan is smoking, it's one that's probably too hot for whatever oil you're using, and you need to change that oil out. But what are you breathing into? Those heat damaged fats? You're breathing them in, but you're also getting those on the food that you're eating. So just pay attention to those things as you're doing that. Avocado oil refined is probably has one of the highest smoke points of any of the oils. So it's probably one of the more safer ones to use. But if you're using olive oil, like general olive oil has a decent smoke point to it, but if it's any high heat, if you're cooking stovetop, it's probably not a great idea. So the best ways to store our oils that we buy, it's a cool, dry place away from heat sources or direct sunlight. So sunlight and exposure to air and moisture that causes the oils to break down and degrade over time. So if it's been sitting in your cabinet for 4 years, it might not be great, right? If you've opened it, if it's unopened, maybe it's okay. But if it's open and been sitting there for a very long time, make sure that you probably go toss that and get a new one. Oils in dark glasses or stainless steels containers are a little bit more beneficial because the sunlight's not hitting them. And then avoid storing them near the stove where heat fluctuations are constant. So you want a cool, dry place. Maybe it's a little bit more inconvenient, but that's a little safer for that oil. So remember, it's not about one-time exposure. It's about chronic daily exposures that you're doing this day in and day out. So multiple processed foods throughout the day, across every meal, every week of the year, every month, right? That's what's going to add up. And then most of the people that I see are probably pairing seed oils with things like high sugar food dyes and all these other things that are inflammatory as well. So just bringing awareness to reading our ingredient list can go a long way. Today we're talking about oils, but there's a lot more to that. Just pay attention to how processed seed oils are getting into your diet and start making some shifts in the right direction. So let's start reading labels a little bit differently. You have to kind of ignore the front of the package. They're really good at marketing, right? So the front of the package you can think of as marketing. The back of the package is where you're going to get some of the good ingredients that you're probably looking for. So it might even say natural, wholesome, light, heart healthy on the front of the package, but that can be really misleading. So make sure you flip it over to the back, read the ingredient label. A lot of those things have vegetable oils and seed oils in them. So start scanning the ingredient list and see if there's any oils, vegetable oils, blend of oils, or any of those oils from that list earlier. Just be cautious with those. Dressings and condiments are very common to have seed oils in them. Olive oil based, and that could be like the third or fourth oil. after canola or soybean oil. So just make sure there could be multiple oils in it and just be diligent about reading that. Olive oil has note at the end here. So there's olive oil is a big one because there's different things in the olive oil world. So I try to get something in a glass container or stainless steel. That's a big one. And then I look at the sources of it. So if it's coming from multiple sources, it's usually no good. So if it's like it came from Italy and Spain and Portugal or whatever, it has 3 or 4 countries on it, that usually is a bunch of mixed stuff in there, and it's probably not a great olive oil. You want it to come from one single origin, and you want it to be in stainless steel and glass. Those are good signs that it's a quality oil. So just be diligent if you're buying the big old plastic bin one from Sam's Club or Costco, see where it's coming from. You'll be surprised. You look on the back of it and there's 5 different countries of origin. Usually not a great sign. Okay. Remember, we're just bringing awareness to some of these things. You might be using it, you just weren't aware of what you needed to be aware of. So avocado, go out and practice reading labels. So avocado oil, the ingredient list is by quantity. So the first thing on the ingredient list, and when you read it, is going to be the most of that ingredient on that list. So the quantity of that item will be the most. So if avocado oil is the first thing on the ingredient list, that's the most of that ingredient compared to what's next and 2, 3, 4 things down the list. Ideally, we don't want any. I tell my clients if it has more ingredients than you do fingers, it's probably not the best thing for you. So trying to get things that are more whole food related that don't have an ingredient list is the best for us. But when we're trying to buy something in a package, we're trying to avoid as many things as we can that are going to be inflammatory. So look at your ingredient list, start piecing some of these things out, and see how many things you're eating on a constant basis that have a lot of these oils in them. Preservatives, BHA, BHT, sodium benzoate, all these things are artificial preservatives, not super great for us. Right? Remember, if it's shelf stable a very long time, usually probably inflammatory to us. Okay, so the pantry clean out. Start with the biggest wins. What do you guys use the most? What are you going to run out with first that you can potentially replace? Cooking oils is a big one. Actually, Sam's and Costco, to give you an example, some of these big chains like that have bigger things of coconut oil, and they're usually a pretty good quality. So just check that out for a high leverage swap. Cooking oils is huge. So avocado oil, huge in a glass. Make sure it's refined if you're going to use it for stovetop cooking. Mayonnaise, huge one. Most, I know our local stores here have avocado mayonnaise instead of soybean oil. So that's a big win. Primal Kitchen is a good brand that's local, that we have locally at least. Salad dressings, that's another easy one to look for seed oils in. What kind of oil are they using with salad dressings? You could even make your own dressing with olive oil. Chips and crackers, probably need to avoid chips and crackers anyways, but just look to see what's on. Usually the ingredient list on a chips and a cracker package is probably like a mile long. So probably not the greatest for us. Try to get things, if you're going to eat those things, try to get them with the least amount of ingredients as possible. And even when the list is short, try to make sure it's good ingredients still, quality ingredients. Sauces and condiments, marinades, hot sauces, a lot of those things are caked with oils because they're cheap and they're shelf stable. So either make your own sauces, or there's a ton of sauces out now that are coming with better ingredients. And then nut butters, frozen foods. Nut butters are notorious for palm oil and some other oils that are just not great for us. So be aware, look at your ingredients. A lot of stores now are carrying a lot better options that don't have any oils in them. So just be aware and start buying those things. If we start buying those things and create the demand for them, a lot of the times that's when food gets a little bit cheaper because we create the demand for it. So if we're aware and start to use our grocery store as creating that demand, then sometimes we can find the benefit of making that stuff a little cheaper for us. So try to be realistic and do things that your family is going to stick with, and make sure your family's on board with a lot of this stuff. And we'll talk a bit in a minute on how you can get your family involved in this. So you don't need to find the perfect product immediately. You can try. Sometimes it's trial and error, and that's okay too. Don't be afraid to try. There's a lot of different things that you can swap out. And then here's a list of some common things that we found to be helpful. And try some of these things out. Try different oils out as you're cooking. So refined coconut oil or avocado oil sprays are out there. We have an avocado oil. We just got a blank glass sprayer that we put our avocado in to spray different things on. Making sure you use real butter or ghee, preferably organic from grass-fed cows would be the best. Olive oil. We talked about olive oil and what to do with olive oil. Nut butters, read your ingredients, just nuts and salt. That's all you need in those. And then if you want to do the chips, there's a lot of companies using coconut or avocado oil these days. So try to upgrade that pantry a little bit with some of these oils, some of these swaps. You don't need to be perfect, but be aware of what you're eating, and you're trying to reduce your family's load over time, right? So eating out is a question we get a lot. And so you got to focus on what you can control and then let the rest go. Have grace for yourself. Just remember focusing on how you eat rather than what you're eating at restaurants. So do the best you can. If we are going out to a restaurant, we usually look ahead at the menu. We already know what we're going to order before we go in a lot of the times. Most of the time we cook at home. So prioritize cooking at home. When you're out, prioritize protein, prioritize your roasted vegetables and get some fruits in the mix there. Trying to choose grilled over fried stuff. It usually helps. And then we save fun foods for intentional moments. So it's okay to have some of these things sometimes, but when they're part of your daily life, day in and day out, week in, week out, they're going to cause a lot of inflammation. Not saying they won't cause inflammation in those moments, but when you have it every once in a while compared to every day, it's going to make a big difference. And you'll feel how it truly makes you feel when you just have it every once in a while. And a lot of times you'll find avenues to not eat that or some substitutions that don't make you feel bad. And so it takes practice, but you got to start somewhere, take a first step. And then as a family application, so when you're trying to change the pantry around, bring the family in and get them aware of what you're trying to do. So with our kids are 4, 6, and 1, and so with our 4 and 6-year-old, I read ingredients labels with them. They are understanding what's in that food that makes it bad. And so when they ask, they're like, "Oh, well, let's get this whatever at Sam's Club or Dillon's or wherever you're at store wise." I'm like, "Well, let's read the ingredient list." And so we read the ingredient list together, and I tell them why these things are bad. I'm like, "Hey, this is an ingredient here that causes inflammation and it makes your belly hurt. We try to avoid this thing in our house." And so just having that conversation opens up and trying to help them understand why we don't eat these things. It's not that we don't have enjoyable things, it's we choose what enjoyable things we have. Most of the time we make those at home so we know what's in there, and our kids know that. So do it together, involve the kids in reading your labels. You can have a list. I've seen people do this where they have a list of what ingredient is there and why it's not great for you. And they just have those an ingredient list on the fridge and why it's not bad for you or why it's bad for you, right? And that works well too. When you reiterate these things to kids, they usually do well. Our kids start to ask the questions like, "Hey, now they're, hey, does this have gluten in it? Hey, does this have whatever sugar in it? Does it have dyes in it?" They know to start looking for these things on their own. And that's what we're trying to teach them, right? Is how we don't want to force things on them. We want them to understand why we're doing something. So just start having those conversations. It might not be perfect, and that's okay. Step in the right direction. Do a taste test together, like avocado mayo. A lot of times these things taste exactly the same, but you're having a better ingredient, right? So do a side-by-side taste, test the old version versus the new one. Some of them have a little bit different taste, but taste pretty similar. Some of the times kids don't care. So replace one category at a time. Pick one area. Like today we did oils, maybe some mayo, maybe chips, maybe focus on processed food stuff, then move to the next one. So build on what your foundation that you set. Switch to the primary cooking oil in your home. The single change affects every meal cooked at home and the highest quality leverage you can have. Even if you just did one oil, hey, this is going to be the oil we cook with. and you just start there. That's a great start. So small changes add up over time. When you start to get these things in every once in a while instead of every day, that usually reduces our inflammatory load to our body. So just take a step in the right direction and then build on that. Right. So today was cooking oils. Go out, try some cooking oils and see if you notice a difference. And just know that you're doing better for your family either way. Right. We're reducing that inflammatory load that maybe you'd even know anything about. Now you have another tool in your toolbox you can go out and be aware of and take steps to get better. Approach your health to the best of your knowledge. All right, we'll go start using some better oils, and we will talk to you guys next Thursday. Have a great week.